Welcome back to another deep dive with Colin. Today we're going to talk about something simple yet very fundamental in our industry, and that is properly cleaning and reclaiming your screen. And in that, what I mean is by properly removing all the emulsion so that there is no emulsion haze, that emulsion is completely gone from the screen, and so that there's also no image stain left behind. You look at the screen and it's nearly perfect, because we're never going to get it perfectly perfect. We want to get it as close as possible to the day that we got that screen, clean as can be. And there's a couple of ways to go about doing that, but all of them revolve around using the correct tools at the correct time. So that's why we're here on press and not in the darkroom right now. So when it comes to cleaning your screen, one of the things that I want you to understand is in your ink, there are pigments. And in your mesh, in how that mesh is formed, we have the threads of the mesh going up and over on other threads. And in those threads, you have these crevasses, or crevices, depending on how fancy you're feeling today. And in that crevice, you can get pigment locked in, kind of shoved in. A good way to think about that is sediment in a river. As a muddy river starts to drop in water level, you're going to get that sediment settling around all the rocks in that river. And you can think of that sediment as the pigment. So during the print cycle, we're going to get pigment lodged into those knuckles of the mesh. And that's what it is that causes that image stain when you reclaim. So the first step is to use a cleaning chemistry that works with the pigment to remove it. You want to use an ink cleaner that has really good surfactants in it. We're going to use the Easy Way multi-purpose. Another good one is the Saudi IR26. We also have the Screen Ink Degrader that's going to do a good job. And if you are wanting to use the safest chemistry you can, Franmar has another one called Haze Remover ES. ES stands for Emulsion Safe. They all work fantastic at removing the color from the mesh of your screen. So the first thing we always do, of course, is clean the ink out of the screen. Now we're using the Wilflex Rio Diamond Black. And the reason why I'm talking about what ink I'm using is that not all inks clean up the same. Some inks will stay in that mesh as color. You'll see visual color in that mesh a little more than you would other inks. Like, for example, FN. FN is going to clean out of that screen really, really easy. In fact, if I wanted to cheat this example, I'd use FN as, oh, look how amazing. No. So we're going to go with Wilflex, which I know the pigment grind and the chemicals that they're using in the ink, just the basic building blocks of their ink we're going to get a little bit more image stain as a result of that. All right, next thing I want to do is I want to get this shirt in which I have a print on off of the platen. Pull this down. This is our Easy Way multi-purpose. Get it back to a spray instead of a stream. And you can be as liberal with this as you want. We're using just a blue shop towel. If you happen to have t-shirts in your shop that you can cut up for scrap, the cotton t-shirts absorb this really well. They're going to do a better job than you're going to see me do with these blue shop towels. I like to clean out the majority of the ink from this image area before I pull my tape. Because that way, when I pull my tape off and I go to finish cleaning the image area, I don't have as much color spreading around and wanting to get on the inside of my screen. It's a much cleaner way to clean everything up. Spray this again. We're near the bottom of this container. Can't tilt it too much. And it looks like I'm spraying a lot on here. I am spraying a good amount, but I'm not overdoing it. My spray nozzle's just a little constrained. And you can see I'm pulling out a lot of the black by doing that. Also want to wipe down from the backside. Fast forward. Look at how fast Colin cleans the screen. If you were using something like a press wash, What press wash does is it evaporates very quickly. And if you were to try and clean your screen and pull the pigment out of the knuckles of the mesh using press wash, go back to that analogy I spoke of earlier, the sediment at the bottom of the river. Well, press wash, because it evaporates quickly, can cause more like a cracked earth effect in what's going on. Basically, it dries out the pigment in the knuckles of the mesh. And that makes it very challenging to remove when we get down into the darkroom. So that means that we can get an image stain kind of locked into our mesh early on. If I'm using a more oily substance, something that does not evaporate quickly, like the ink degradant, the multi-purpose, that keeps that area kind of moist because, again, it's an oil. Makes it easier to actually continue the process to remove the pigment from the knuckles of the mesh. Now we can see here, this is already pretty good. This is pretty clean. That's the product itself doing its job. All right, so we're gonna tear this screen down. Let's go down to the darkroom. Now let's get rid of the stencil. There's two main ways to do this, of course. We have the spray application method and there's the dip tank method. For this, we're just gonna spray it on so we can see how easily the stencil starts to degrade. And that's always what you want to have happen to your stencil. You never want to have it come off in strips and chunks. That is one of the indicators that you might have done something incorrectly before and during exposing your screen. That can lead to problems later on. If you have the infrastructure for it, always use a pressure washer to blast your stencil off. At this point, a lot of you may be thinking that I cheated. I've got no image stain on here whatsoever. Part of that is because I used the right chemistry. The other part is that I only had ink in the screen for about 24 hours. So I'm reclaiming it pretty quickly, cleaning it out and reclaiming it pretty quickly after use. Now, if I had let that screen sit for 3 or 5 days, a kind of a normal cycle for most print shops before I cleaned it, then that ink has some time to kind of dry out. What can happen is the emulsion is a sponge. It's a terrible sponge, but it's still a sponge. And it can end up soaking up the oils in that ink, causing it to kind of dry out and that pigment to lock into the knuckles of that mesh a little bit harder. So if you do everything in a good fashion, cleaning your screen early in the cycle, reclaiming it early in the cycle, your screens can end up staying really pristine. So I can go through the steps of putting degrease or dehazer on it again, but you're not gonna see anything, which is why I had this one ready. So in all nicety and defense of 730, this is one of their screens from when they were here printing live, when they were touring around with the rock press. They would set it up, they would use a stampinator on press to cure the shirts before they handed it to their customers. But those platens were hot. And that ink was getting hot, which meant that the plastisol itself was getting hotter than needed. Sometimes it was actually curing in the screen a little bit, so they had to clean it out. So this pigment is pretty well locked in. On top of that, this screen was reclaimed and then used for something else. And we can see that emulsion haze right here. We can see that the emulsion has clung to the pigment in these areas. So this is actually the perfect example of how we want to take care of things and why we want to take care of things so that when we get to this step, we don't have these issues. So we're going to go through cleaning this screen, and then at the end, because of how the black got kind of locked in here, it's not going to come out properly. It's still going to have an image stain, but the emulsion haze should be completely gone. We're going to show you one last step that you can do to remove the pigment from the knuckles of the mesh so that you get a near perfect screen. So step one in cleaning a screen like this, of course, is your dehaze step, in which we're going to remove any haze from the emulsion. The ink, I don't believe we're going to affect too much. And then after that, we'll show you a trick to remove that final stain without using anything that's caustic and nasty. This top layer of ink that was here has immediately rinsed away. So just in applying the Easy Way multi-purpose, we were able to immediately remove some of the outlying black ink that was locked into the knuckles. We can already see a little bit of diminishing for the haze that's here, and some softening of some of the other areas. I don't expect to get it all out, and the emulsion haze, I might need to let it soak a little bit depending on how nasty that was. Those are the things that you'll experience as well if you have a screen that's similar. Letting it soak with that chemistry will help to break it down or at least soften it up so that you can remove it with the pressure washer. All right, so we let this sit for close to 2 minutes at this point. We can see that, we're definitely getting some breakdown of the image. I'm gonna turn this around, hit it with the pressure washer. More of that came out than I was expecting. Filtration system, yay. So we can see that up here in the main text, we definitely have a little bit of pigment still there. Would it hurt us at this level to take this screen and put it back into production? No, we would be fine. This line over here is still there. This is actually a water-based ink stain. And water-based pigments don't react well to the oil-based cleaners that we use. The Easy Way products, Saudi products, etc. Those are all petroleum-based products. And the water-based needs something a little bit different, so it's not going to really impact it much. But we got rid of most of it. Now the question is, how do I clean up the rest of this? And this dirty little guy's the answer. This is a melamine sponge, also known as a Mr. Clean Magic Eraser. You can either go and pick up a pack of filtration system. Glad to know it's working. You can either go and pick up a pack of the Mr. Clean Magic Erasers yourself, or you can look up melamine sponge online and look at suppliers for that. So there's two ways to use this. You can either spray chemical on your screen and use this, or use it by itself. Both ways work really well. I've actually found slightly better results by putting chemistry on there. Now, the one thing I do want to warn you about, these are a micro abrasive. So if you use this to get into an area and dig, you can actually see scratches show up on your mesh when you're either rinsing out water or when you go to coat your screen. You can see a blemish or a mar in that area. So just something to be aware of. If you end up using one of these more often than not, you can start to degrade your mesh. It takes a while, but you can do it. So I'm gonna just quickly spray a little chemical on there. I'm gonna rub over that one area. I'm gonna turn it around. And it's gone. I'm not pushing hard at all. So I'm gonna need to do this side. Ah, interesting. So I did not scrub the bottom part of the 730 on the back side of the screen, just the front side. So that shows us that the pigment was lodged on the top of the screen, here where the squeegee is. That's where the majority of the pigment gets lodged. So if you're going to focus your efforts on the squeegee side and not the t-shirt side. And I'm gonna blast it from this side. And voila, we have a clean screen. Now the frame is still a little dirty. That's something I need to work on after this. But your mesh is now clean, free of blemishes, free of any ink that could hang onto and grab onto emulsion, especially if it's been underexposed. And that'll do it for another deep dive with Colin. We went over the ins and outs of why you want to clean your screen properly the first time before you get into the darkroom, and then what you can do to get your screen back to as good as new, minus some tension loss, with just a couple easy steps. Very simple process. All it takes is an eye to detail and having a few tools at your disposal. Like and subscribe if you liked what you saw here today. If you have any questions about the darkroom, and I know there's going to be a lot of questions about cleaning and darkroom stuff and all the rest of it, drop your questions below. We'll do our best to answer them. We might do a supplemental video on some of those questions. If you know someone who could use a little extra help in the darkroom and you think this video is going to cover that for them, sure, send it to them. Thanks again for watching. We'll see you guys in the next one.